The Chargers went out and got Dante Jackson in free agency at corner and also drafted RJ Minkins at safety in the 6th round. So what does that mean for the Chargers secondary and who's going to start in 2025? Let's get into it. All right, as we round out our positional battles series in 2025 for the defense, we're going to talk about the secondary, the cornerbacks and the safeties. We went through edge rushers, D linemen, linebackers as a whole. So we're going to round it out today with starting cornerbacks and starting safeties, at least what my prediction is. So we're going to get into a few guys that we think they're vying for the idea of starting corner and safety. And we're going to tell you why not we feel like they should start for Jesse Miller's defense in 2025. So I like what the Chargers did as a whole in the last couple of years in regards to what they brought in. We can't say enough about Dante Jackson and company, bringing those guys in. Even Benjamin St. Juste, who I have angst about because of how he performed in Washington, but I get the idea of what they're trying to do based upon his stature and things of that nature, his physicality. But I'm not too high on that particular pick. I'm not going to put him in this segment. I'm not going to waste you guys' time in that space. I'm just going to wait and see on him. But there are some guys I'm excited about, including the incumbents as well as the new guys and new faces that they brought in either via free agency or draft. So let's start with our guy, Dante Jackson. Now, Dante Jackson has always been a solid corner in the league. He played a long time with the Panthers. He got sent over. I think he actually went in free agency over to the Steelers in 2024 and played there for a season. Did pretty well for himself. Had some pretty good numbers. But what jumps off the chart always has about him is his athleticism, his speed, his physicality. He's always been a solid, good. I wouldn't call him a number one corner, but he's definitely a solid number two, in most people's eyes and most people's philosophy. So I would say that Dante Jackson is definitely, a solid corner. He is getting a little up there in age. I believe he's 28 at this moment. Signed a 2-year deal with the team. So I think they have the belief that he's going to be solid for them for the next couple of years and bring that veteran leadership into the room. I think that's what they're lacking because it was a really, really young room when it comes down to cornerbacks in the last few years. Didn't have a whole lot of veteran leadership and things of that nature. Of course, the J.C. Jackson thing was a bust and amongst a myriad of other things that the Brandon Staley regime brought, dark clouds over the franchise with. But signing Dante Jackson, I think was a pretty good move. I like what they did there. Again, his speedy corner. I mean, he's not super tall. I think he's probably on the shorter end in the cornerback room. But again, he definitely is a physical, speedy, tough corner. I think it fits the mindset and the philosophy and the culture that Jim Harbaugh wants to instill. So I definitely get and understand the signing completely based upon what he's done. He's a former, I believe, a 4.2 guy when he ran. I think he ran a 4.2 when he came into the league. Low, high 4.3, maybe 4.3 flat, definitely maybe a 4.29, something around that nature. So he definitely got some wheels. I mean, again, you might get a little bit, slower in your development as time goes on, but I still think he has that juice to get downfield with those fast corners. So can't sleep on that either. But definitely a good side of a Dante Jackson. So I like what they're doing there. He's gonna be good for the team wherever he plays. So let's talk about the young boys as well. Let's start with Cam Hart. Cam Hart again, was a draft pick or late round draft pick for the Chargers. I believe we're talking 6th round. I think he picked up him and Terry still both in the 6th round, maybe 5th. I had to fact check that. But again, later round picks. Tall, rangy corner. Him and Steele both well over 6'2". And they're not the speediest of corners, but they're really physical tackling machines. And again, it's like throwing over a wall when you got 6'2", 6'3", athletic jumping corners. It's hard to get around those guys, especially when you're facing them in zones. So you're trying to build a legit fence around your defense and say that it's going to be hard to get around these avenues with these guys all being 6'2" and above, in that space. So I get what Jessamine is trying to do there, trying to, just put big bodies in front and, cause those passing windows to be small. But Cam Hart had a solid, rookie season, but he was, hampered a little bit by concussions. So I think that's the only thing that's going to really hold him back. Can he limit that? And can he get a handle on that? Some players, end up getting a handle on it. Some players don't. But it's just a matter of what he can or cannot get a handle on it. But I do believe that when he was on the field, he was highly productive. He was definitely good in his Justin Miller scheme. So he should have another solid camp and come in early on and compete for a starting job. So I definitely like what Cam Hart did. And he was a starting guy. He was a number one outside corner before the injuries, where Taib still kind of took the reins and took the shine. But I do like what he does. We gotta watch those head injuries, because I think one or two more head injuries, I think they're gonna have to reconsider what his future is gonna be like. Because again, a young man, he's coming into the second season. You can't, mortgage your future, your life, in a sense, based upon trying to play football. It just might not be in the cards for him, but I hope that that's not the case. Hope that he doesn't have these, concussion issues going forward, and will definitely be a guy that you can kind of rely on going forward, because I like his grit, I like his skill set. He's a very tough kid. I mean, I haven't seen a corner tackle with the ferocity he does and hit the way he does in a long time. I would argue that he almost plays like a safety. He definitely has that physicality to his game. So I like his game. I definitely like what he does and what he brings to the team. It's just a question of whether or not he can stay on the field. So that brings me to Tarheeb Steele. Tarheeb Steele was money for last year. I mean, we, bar none. I mean, we going back to the breakout game when against the Falcons, where he picked off Kirk Cousins, and took it to the house. He was definitely a wake up call and a breath of fresh air for the Chargers organization and the secondary. Again, another rangy corner, another 6'2+ corner. Rangy 4.5 speed. Physical tackling corner. Great outside. Skills. I mean, yeah, he's definitely, fits the Jim Harbaugh mode of doing things as well. He definitely has, Jesse Miller, in the same breath. He definitely does bring a lot to the table as regards to his skill set. I definitely like what he does. Again, another physical corner who doesn't have the injury, issues that Cam had, unfortunately. So, I definitely like what he does. I mean, it's, again, and we're looking at it from a perspective, he should only get better. Having a great rookie campaign should be a springboard for you to get into your next, 2 to 3 years to be really fold into a legit corner and a Pro Bowl like corner in this league. So I definitely like the upside what Tarheeb Bell brings. I mean, just his stature, his athleticism, and his grit, and the way he plays in the system. So I think that he definitely has a leg up in what he should be able to do and be out there on the field early and often for the Chargers. Praying that nothing bad happens. So, but definitely think that he has a leg up based upon what he did last year, and he only should grow from there. That gets into the veteran holdover from the Steady regime in Ja'Sir Taylor. Ja'Sir Taylor is interesting to me. He was a former 6th round pick as well. 4.3 speed guy, really speedy, athletic guy. He just hasn't seemed to hit his stride, in a sense. Again, you can't bank on lower round picks being guaranteed money every single time when you draft these guys. They're just not in the cards. You expect when the 1 through 3, maybe 4 round guys to be, quote unquote, mainstays, but you don't put a lot of stock in a 6th round pick. It's a flyer in a sense. If he hits, he hits. He doesn't. But Ja'Sir is one of those guys that hadn't really hit a stride yet. He's playing mainly special teams, a little bit of slot corner for this team with the Steady regime and the Harbaugh regime, but he hasn't really been on the field a lot. And with them bringing in 2 corners, and I've been saying this for a while, that when they bring in guys, in multitudes of ways, either for agency or the draft, that kind of is as a sign that they're more so like what these other guys do more than you do. It should be a wake up call for wide receivers that were in house when the Harbaugh's got there, and corners as well. Because if I bring in, I think they brought in a number of, I want to say they drafted at least 3 corners and have past 2 drafts. That should be a wake up call to say, and picked up one in free agency. So 2 in free agency actually, because St. Juice is one as well. So they picked up a lot of secondary guys. So that should tell you that they're not that high on you as being a starter. So that should be a wake up call, and it could be make or break year for Ja'Sir in all honesty, because I think he's on his last year of his deal. So yeah, it might not be a situation where he may even makes the roster depending on what the other guys do. You got the kid Traquez Bridges, who's a 7th-round pick, should be hungry as well. And he has, the same skill set athletically that Jasir does. So maybe they just bank on, if they're going to use a roster spot for this cornerback area, and they have to choose between Bridges and Taylor. They might cut Taylor because he's on his last year of his deal and groom Bridges because they like him better. But we'll see. But I mean, again, he hasn't really hit his stride, and he hasn't really showed us what he does well in a lot of spaces. He's had struggles in man coverage and other things. So I'm not sure about him, but we'll see how things go for him in camp. Again, maybe the urgency of being a make or break will be it for him. But before I get to the safeties, if I had to bank on it, I would argue that what they would probably do or like to do, although Dante Jackson is mainly play outside corner in his life, I think they might bank on the idea if Cam Hart's going to stay healthy. Put Cam Hart and Tarheeb still on the outside because they had the frame and the style and the physicality to be inside, and use Dante's athleticism to play in a slot. But I do think they're going to mix and match it because I do think Derwin, especially how they line up in formations, and what they come out in personnel wise, Derwin won't be in the box a lot because that's going to play into the safety conversation I'm going to already have. But I do think that if they're going to go classic 3 corners across the board and nickel, I think that Hart and Steele will be on the outside, and Dante Jackson could likely play slot because of his athletic ability, his twitchiness, and his overall speed with those 2-way go receivers and playing those slots. I think they'll try that out early on. Utilize him in that area, and let him play the slot and see how things shake out. But again, like I said, he played outside for the most of his career, but I think that he has the athleticism and the ability to play slot. So I think that we'll try that out first and see how that works. And, maybe they'll mix and match it. And again, it all based on Cam Hart's availability. But if Cam Hart does get hurt, I think Jackson and Steele start on the outside, and then they have to decide about putting Derwin in the slot, primarily, or another corner, St. Juice or Bridges or whoever makes the roster in that space. But I think that they will likely roll out this from a personnel perspective and go with that in their 3 cornerback nickel package. So we'll see how things shake. But I like that. I like what all 3 guys bring to the table if they can be on the field together. And I think they'll be a good trio to shut down these wide receivers in the NFL for sure. All right, so moving on to the safety room. I'm not going to sit and act like we're going to argue over Derwin James. Derwin James' position is solidified. He's not going anywhere. So he's going to be the starting safety on one end. I think Alohi Gilman, I think they're going to like to play 3 safeties in a lot of spaces. So I think Alohi Gilman and Elijah Molden and RJ Mickens are going to fight for that other spot. I think Elijah Molden is pretty solidified as being one guy. If they're going to play Derwin in the box, so who's going to be the other deep safety is the question. So I think that fight is going to come down to Alohi Gilman and RJ Mickens, in my opinion. If you looked at my videos in the previous, I'm high on RJ Mickens in his skill set and his athleticism and what he brings to the table. Still don't understand why he fell to the 6th round, but hey, we have him. He's in house, and I'm happy about it. So if I had to be honest about Alohi Gilman, I'm not really high on him. I don't think that, again, another holdover from the Staley regime, and I'm not high on his athleticism, his cover skills, his tackling ability. He leaves a lot to be desired. He leaves a lot of plays on the field. So I would argue that he could be on a cut candidate basis, depending on how RJ plays in camp. So if RJ plays well in camp, you got Molden, Derwin, and RJ playing well, and they're playing well together. I got Alohi being the odd man out, to be honest. I do. And again, he's another guy that's on the last year of his deal. Won't be punitive to cut bait with him or trade him or whatever the case may be, if anybody will take him. So I think that, unless Alohi shows or put up a shut up type moment, make a break for him, unless he shows something better in camp that they haven't seen, I think that he's a cut candidate, in all honesty. That would be my ideology or my thought process going into the 2025 season. But again, I think he's limited in what he does and how he plays in the secondary, especially in the system. So I'm not really big on his ability to play and be productive on the field. And if he has to be a depth piece, I would worry about how you deploy him. I wouldn't put him in every position. I would kind of try to put him in one position where he can be, I guess you say a fail safe. In a sense, I wouldn't bank on him covering anybody one-on-one or being a defender on any deep passes, going to break up anything. He hadn't really been that guy. I'm just going to be honest. He hadn't really been that guy. Again, another lower round draft pick, so you can't expect much. But I do believe that the guy I'm going to talk about should be a prime candidate to take his spot. And I like his skill set way better than I do Alohi Gilman's. And that's talking about RJ Mickens. I think RJ Mickens is a shoe-in to win this roster spot. I think he is. I mean, the kid has at 80 to 89, maybe 90% coverage rate in his entire college career. He runs a 4.40. He's a 200-pound, almost 25-pound safety, over 6 foot. I mean, this kid he just pops on tape to me. He just pops on tape to me, and I'm very surprised and very shocked. And I'm still trying to dig into why he fell so far in the draft. I don't get it. I understand there was a lot of safeties in the draft that were more in the limelight in regards to who they played, but this kid gets a baller, man. And I think that him playing in that too high set with his skill set, his break on ball abilities, his cover skills, I think that he already has a leg up coming out of college over Aloy Gilman. I really do. So if I can deploy a conversation where I got R.J. Mickens, Derwin James, and Elijah Molden on the field, I love my chances in stopping people in the pass game. I really do. I really do. I think R.J. Mickens it should make this roster, pray for his health, and it just like everybody else. But if he comes in and he doesn't hit a rookie wall or anything like that, he doesn't pick up the system well early on, and that's the only thing that should hold him back. But if he picks up the system well, his athleticism, his skill set, and just his overall football IQ should garner him a roster spot. And I think he's going to be a fine addition to this secondary. So I like what they're doing here. I like that R.J. Mickens pick. Again, don't understand why he's filled to the 6th round, but I'm not mad. So I think that he's going to be the shoe-in to be that third safety and be a person that's going to be able to cover those deep routes, those deep passes. He's going to be, a person that's going to be really ball hawking savvy. So I like his skill set. And I really think he's going to bring a lot to the table. So I'm just waiting to see how he does and can't. But like I said, for my money, I think that Molden, James, and Mickens should be your 3 safeties, and Steele, Hart, and Jackson should be your 3 corners. And just how you mix and match and deploy based on personnel and how they bring out their weapons on the offense, and just roll. Let's roll with it, man. I think it'll be a good deal. So let me know in the comments how you feel about these guys. What you think about who's going to start in the secondary. Who you have reservations about, who you don't. And let me know in the comments how you feel about that. Hit that subscribe button as always and never miss any Chargers content. And you always got to remember to bolt up.